When debt collection turns bad on this Money Monday, we want to welcome back Leslie Tane, a debt resolution attorney and founder of the Tane Law Group. Thanks for rejoining us. Incessant calling, harassment, what are some of the worst cases you've heard of that have come across your desk?
So over the years, I've heard quite a number of what's called phantom debt collection practices, where somebody will reach out to an alleged debtor claiming that they owe money. They'll threaten to arrest them. They can threaten to go contact their job. They can threaten to contact even their neighbors or other people in their community. And that is really scary.
How do they get their information? And are these legitimate debts or are they fake debts? What's usually the case?
Under the phantom debt collection, those are not real debts. Those are companies that are looking to collect on debts that are either expired or they actually don't exist. So what ends up happening is they can find the information about you really easily. They can purchase the information. You can purchase it from a variety of different sources. So they could get a piece of your social security number. They could get your home information. They could get your work information. And just by having a little bit of information, it lures in the debtor or the consumer into this false sense of thought process that, wait, they have all this information on me. Perhaps I do owe this money and I just forgot about it.
Now, do they just kind of carpet bomb people, or are they precise in how they target their victims? Because I know there are a lot of elderly people end up getting scammed this way.
They do. More elderly people do end up getting scammed this way. They're a more vulnerable community than, let's say, a different population. So it's an easy target, so to speak, and for lack of a better word, but it does require you to be at home and to answer the phone and to be less suspect or more trusting, actually, in the information that's disseminated to you. You could also receive information in the mail that provides you with what seems like a threatening letter that you're either going to be sued or there's a litigation filed against you. And it's scary to get a phone call from what's perceived to be a law firm. So much of this phantom debt collection practices occurs around the idea that the person doing the debt collection is either an attorney or calling from a law firm.
Okay, so how would you cross-reference such a threat? So you don't want to make contact with these people if they've called and left a message, or if they just keep calling. You don't want to answer the phone. You don't want to answer their mail. Is there any way to cross-reference to see, well, goodness, they're listing a case number, or maybe no case number at all? Is there a way for you to physically find out, go to the court directly to know if there's any pending litigation against you?
Depending on where you live, it could be a little bit of a challenge for you to actually pull up court records to find out whether information is within the court system. Again, depending on that jurisdiction, it could be an electronically filed case or not. So it might be a little bit of a challenge. And today, with the courts being closed, going there may be also a challenge. So my recommendation is, before you give out any personal information or even verify information, make sure you take down their name, their phone number, ask them the original creditor, how much is owed, and ask them to validate the debt by providing you proof that you owed that money.
Okay, so we've just talked about those phantom debts. Let's talk about the actual real debts, because I know since the Great Recession, there was a lot of debt collection going on, and I hate to say it, but because of COVID, history could potentially repeat itself. A lot of laws are put in place that debt collectors couldn't contact through your cell phone, and there were certain laws put in place to make sure that the consumer was protected. But can you talk about some of the ways in which those debt collectors try to get around the law?
Sure. So the law is called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Law, and you can look that up online and find out all the different ways that you as a consumer are protected by debt collection practices. Note that that does apply to consumer debts, and it applies to not the original creditor. So if it's the main bank calling you, then that particular law wouldn't apply. But in your local area, there may be city or state laws that also can protect you. And once you understand what a debt collector can and cannot do, it really empowers you to understand whether that phone call or the letter that you received is accurate. You do have the right to show that to an attorney or an advocate, and there are laws that allow you to sue for false debt collection practices. You can also file a complaint with the FTC and certainly your local governments, consumer areas. You can also understand that those laws are there for your protection as the consumer, meaning they can't call you within certain hours, meaning they can't call you at 2 o'clock in the morning. They can't threaten that they're going to sue you if they're not actually going to do that. They can't disseminate the information. So meaning that if you had an answering machine, they can't leave a message detailing all the information. They also can't abuse you and call you a deadbeat. Back in the day, the debt collection arena was full of practices where people were threatened or abused or yelled at. That no longer can happen based on these consumer protection laws.
Okay, I've got so many more questions. We do need to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about a little something called gutter service. So we're going to do that after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. We've been chatting with Leslie Tane. She's a debt resolution attorney and founder of the Tane Law Group, and we're talking about bad debt collection practices. And I mentioned something before we went to commercial, gutter service. So when someone can't get a hold of the debtor, either over the phone or through the mail, that's when you start receiving knocks on the door. But there are certain things that those process servers need to do before they can file an affidavit, but they don't always follow the rules.
That's true. So if you have a legitimate debt and the debt collector is actually going to sue you, what they have to do is serve you with papers, meaning they have to notify you that you're going to be sued. So that process changes state to state. And in many cases, you could be personally served. And what that means is that somebody can show up at your home or your workplace and hand you papers. The gutter service or sewer service is a term that is from a number of years ago when there were so many lawsuits and the process servers were not following procedures. What they were doing was just claiming that they served the person, but they actually didn't. So they would say that they served an individual at your home, and in there what's called affidavit of service, which is a document that they file stating who they serve, they would write down information on somebody that didn't exist. So for example, let's say you lived alone and you are a 55-year-old female, and they would describe that they served a person at 2 o'clock in the afternoon who was a 6'5" male of a different background, and that person, there's no way there would be
definitely
somebody
not the debtor.
Right. Clearly not the debtor. And so they would describe that and they would consider that, let's say, garbage or sewer service, because it really was garbage service.
What kind of recourse does the debtor have then in that case?
You actually have recourse in the lawsuit. So you'd have to know that you were served. And what happens with a lot of the sewer service is that because they claim they served somebody and they actually didn't, you never actually receive notice of the lawsuit. And what ends up happening is you get a judgment against you. So you didn't get an opportunity to even respond. If you had an opportunity to respond, you would say that you weren't properly served and the lawsuit would be thrown out, or they would have an opportunity to reserve you if it was a proper lawsuit. But again, through sewer service or garbage service, many debtors were not actually being properly served, so they didn't even know they had a lawsuit.
So what kind of recourse does the consumer have to be heard?
So you do. The unfortunate side to that is the question becomes when, in fact, you find out about the lawsuit. Sometimes people don't find out about the lawsuit for years later because it became a lien against their real property, their home. Or they find out that their wages are being garnished, or they find out that their bank account is frozen and they have no access to their funds, and they had no idea this happened. In those cases, you have to seek out an attorney, somebody who can help you open the case. Usually that's done through motion, or what we sometimes call in some jurisdictions an order to show cause. So that would be heard quicker than the regular lawsuit to give you an opportunity to say, hey, I wasn't served. I actually have a client who was served in my practice, and he was out of the country. He was in Korea at the time, and they claimed that they served him, but he was out of the country, and we could show proof that he was out of the country. So if you have proof on the date that they claim you were served that there's no way that you would have been served, that will help your case a lot.
Okay, so, but what about for people who can't afford an attorney? What if they wanted to uh, go in pro per, representing themselves? I mean, could they still have the same opportunity as if they had hired an attorney?
They could. You could go in as what we call pro se on your own, but my recommendation is that you try to find a legal services that's free and pro bono. Pro bono means that the firm or the agency will do it for free, and there are a lot of not-for-profit agencies who can help you with civil legal services, not just criminal legal services, and that can include matters like this. Look for call your local bar association in the county in which you live, and if you know of a law school in the area that you live in, contact the law school, because very often they have free clinics that will be able to help you and guide you through the process.
Perfect. Leslie, I want to thank you so much for joining us. You gave us a wealth of information, and I know I'm going to have a lot more questions for you the next time, so we look forward to speaking with you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Thanks. So we're back after this.